The village of Ashroot was a quiet place. It sat at the foot of tall mountains, surrounded by thick green forests and cold rivers. The people there were simple and kind. They grew their own food, built their own homes, and took care of each other the best they could. No one in the great kingdom of Ironvale paid much attention to Ashroot. The king certainly did not. The nobles certainly did not. And that had always been fine, until the day a young healer named Marin Solace became impossible to ignore. Marin was 24 years old, with dark eyes and steady hands. She was not loud, she was not bold in the way that people noticed right away, but she was strong in a quiet, deep way, the kind of strength that builds slowly over years of hard living. She had learned everything she knew about healing from her mother, who had passed away when Marin was just 16. A fever had taken her. A fever that good medicine could have treated, if anyone in the kingdom had bothered to send help to a small village like Ashroot. No one had, and so Marin picked up her mother's worn leather journal, full of healing notes and plant recipes, and decided she would be enough. She would learn every root, every herb, every flower in those mountains. She would be the help that never came. She would make sure no one in Ashroot suffered the way her family had. Years passed. Marin became someone the whole village trusted completely. She cured fevers, helped with broken bones, and sat beside the sick in the middle of the night until morning came. She also cared for her younger sister Dara, a gentle 16-year-old with a slow bone sickness that Marin managed daily, with careful herbs and warm treatments. Marin's world was small, but full. She did not need the king's attention, but the king's attention came anyway, and when it did, it came with a laugh. It was a bright afternoon in late spring, when King Aldrich Voss and his royal court rode through Ashroot on a border inspection. Aldrich was 31 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, and used to being the most powerful person on every road he traveled. He had sharp eyes and a face that rarely showed much feeling. His word was law. His presence made people step back and look at the ground. That afternoon, a child in the village had developed a serious lung infection. The royal physician who traveled with the king's group shook his head and said the only treatment that would work required medicine from the capital, at least 2 weeks away. The village mother began to cry quietly. Marin stepped forward. She said she could treat the child with what she had. The royal physician smiled in that thin way people smile when they think something is not worth arguing about. King Aldrich glanced over from his horse. Someone told him the woman offering to help was the village healer. He looked at her simple clothes, her worn bag, her bare feet on the dusty road, and he laughed. It was not cruel. It was the easy laugh of a man who simply could not imagine that this woman had anything useful to offer. He told his physician to let her try, if she wanted, and rode on. The child recovered in 4 days. Marin never sent word to the king. She had no interest in proving herself to a man who had already decided what she was. But she kept the memory of that laugh, quiet and small, like a stone in a pocket. 3 months later, everything changed. King Aldrich had a bonded wolf named Kale. In the world of Ironvale, a bonded wolf was not simply an animal. It was a living piece of the king's own spirit. If Kale died, Aldrich would not survive it. Kale was large and silver-coated, and the king loved him with the kind of love that does not need to be spoken to be seen. During a skirmish near the eastern border, Kale was struck by a blade coated with a rare poison called blackroot toxin. The wound was small. The poison was the problem. It moved slowly through the wolf's body over many hours, dimming his coat and pulling the light from his eyes. By the time the king's physicians understood what they were dealing with, Kale had already been sick for a full day. Every remedy was attempted. Nothing worked. The physicians argued with each other and grew increasingly pale. Aldrich did not sleep. He sat near his wolf and felt, somewhere deep in his own chest, a growing heaviness that told him time was running out. Then one of his advisors remembered a rumor. A border guard had once passed through a small village at the foot of the mountains and mentioned a healer who cured a dying child in 4 days when the royal physician had given up. It was a thin thread, but when every other option has been tried, a thin thread becomes very important. Aldrich sent a rider south. Marin was in her garden when the rider arrived. She listened carefully as he described Kale's condition. She did not speak for a moment. Then she went inside and opened her mother's journal to a page near the back. There, in careful handwriting, was a description of blackroot toxin, what it did, how it moved, and how it could be drawn out. Her mother had treated a dying fox with this method once, long ago, and it had worked. Maren was perhaps the only person in all of Ironvale who had ever read that page. She packed her satchel, told Dara she would return within a week, and followed the rider north. She did not go because the king had called for her. She went because a living creature was suffering from something she knew how to treat, and that was reason enough. When she was brought before King Aldrich at the war camp, she watched the moment he recognized her, the woman from the dusty road, the one he had laughed at. Something shifted in his face. Not guilt, exactly, more like the uncomfortable feeling of a person who realizes they may have been badly wrong about something. Maren did not give him time to find the right expression. She asked to see Cale immediately. The royal physicians tried to step in her way. Aldrich waved them aside, not because he fully believed in her yet, but because some deep instinct told him to let her through. She knelt beside the wolf and examined him carefully for nearly an hour. Then she stood and told Aldrich exactly what she saw and what she could do. The treatment needed 3 things: specific roots from the nearby mountain slopes, which she would collect herself, complete quiet around Cale for the full night, with no physicians or guards nearby, and one more requirement she would explain when the time came. Aldrich agreed to the first 2 without hesitation. He narrowed his eyes at the third. She held his gaze. After a moment, he agreed to that as well. Maren returned from the mountain slopes with her arms full and went to work. She ground roots into a thick mixture, prepared a drawing tea, and applied warm stone compressions along Cale's sides in a careful pattern her mother had called the river path, guiding poison out the way water finds its way downhill. It required great patience and precision. She worked through the night alone. Outside the tent, Aldrich sat on the ground against a supply wagon and listened. The wolf had sounded like a man struggling under a weight too heavy to carry. By the time the sky began to lighten, the breathing had changed. Slower, easier, more like rest than effort. When Maren came out at first light, Aldrich was already on his feet. She told him the worst had passed, and that one more treatment the following night would finish the work. Then she told him the third requirement. Blackroot toxin, she explained, leaves its final traces not in the body, but somewhere deeper, in the spirit of the creature it has infected. Medicine alone cannot reach that place. The only way to clear it was something her mother's journal called a vital transfer, a healer giving a portion of their own living energy to push the last of the poison out. It did not always harm the healer, but it always cost something. Given how far along Cale's condition had been, she expected the cost to be significant. She had already decided she would pay it. Aldrich said no, immediately, firmly, without question. Maren looked at him steadily. Then she said, it was not his refusal to make. This was her choice, made freely, before she had ever left Ashroot. He could not take it from her. He stared at her. She did not look away. He had never had someone speak to him that plainly without fear, and he found, to his own surprise, that he did not want to argue. He wanted to understand. In the hours between the 2 treatments, they talked. Aldrich asked why she had come knowing the risk. She told him about her mother and the fever that took her, about the physician who never came, about being 16 and alone with a journal and a decision to make, about Dara, about what it meant to live in a village the kingdom had forgotten. She was not angry when she said these things. She spoke with the calm of someone who has carried a truth for a long time and no longer sees any reason to keep it hidden. Aldrich listened without preparing his response, without looking for the right political answer. He simply listened. He asked if she hated him. She thought about it honestly. She said no. She said she had come because Cale deserved to live, because the king clearly loved him, and because she was a healer, and this was what healers did. And then she said that yes, she remembered the laugh. She hoped he would remember this. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I already do. It was the most honest thing he had said to another person in years. The second treatment began at midnight. Maren knelt beside Cale, placed both hands on his chest, and began. From the outside, it looked like stillness, but slowly, visibly, something happened to Maren. The color left her face. The steady strength she always carried, that quiet, rooted strength, began to give way, like a flame burning down to its last bit of wick. Aldrich had promised to stay outside. But watching through the gap in the tent, he saw what was happening to her and could not remain still. He went inside, not to stop her, because he understood now that she had been right, but to kneel across from her, take hold of her wrist with both hands, and simply be present. So she was not alone in it. The breath that completed the transfer was long and slow and peaceful, like a woman setting down something very heavy after carrying it a great distance. In the same moment, Cale's eyes opened wide. His silver coat blazed with light. He lifted his head, then his body, and stood, strong and alive and fully himself. Merrin fell. Aldrich caught her. He was calling for his physicians before she had fully settled in his arms, and there was nothing composed or controlled about how he called for them. He held her and did not move until help arrived. She was alive. Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow, but she was alive. The royal physicians worked through the remaining night hours to warm her body and strengthen her breathing. By morning, she was stable. By the following day, she was awake, irritable, and asking for water, which Aldrich took as an encouraging sign. Cale stayed near her for every day of her recovery. He slept outside her tent at night. He brought her things: a smooth river stone, a pine cone, once a rabbit she gently turned down. He rested his large silver head near her hand when she slept. No one had ever seen the Alpha King's bonded wolf choose someone so completely and so quietly. It was not a performance. It was simply what Cale had decided. Aldrich watched this and understood. He had trusted Cale's instincts for years in matters of danger and battle. He saw no reason to stop now. When Merrin was well enough to walk and well enough to argue, she told Aldrich she was going home. Dara needed her. He did not try to change her mind. He knew she was right. Before she left, he signed 3 royal decrees. The first gave permanent financial support to healers in every outer village in Ironvale. The second opened the capital's great medical library to any healer in the kingdom, regardless of rank or background. The third was written for Merrin and Dara by name: good land, a proper home, and full resources for Dara's care, given in recognition of a debt that could not be fully repaid. He walked her to the road on the morning she left. Cale followed and sat at the tree line, watching. Aldrich did not try to say the large things, the things that would have taken too long and still not come out right. He said simply that he was grateful, and that Ashroot would never be forgotten again. Merrin looked at him, then she nodded once, the way she did when something was settled, and she walked. The road south was quiet and cool. She was tired, in a way that would take a long time to leave, not just her body, but something deeper, something that had been poured out and would need time to fill again. But she was also something she did not quite have a word for, seen perhaps, or simply no longer invisible. From behind her, at the tree line, came a sound. Not a howl, not quite a call, something in between, something that said, "We know you now," something that said, "We will not forget." Merrin smiled and kept walking. The smile stayed on her face for a long time. She had not come for recognition. She had not come for a reward. She had come because it was right, because she was a healer, and because that had always been enough. Some people wait their whole lives to be seen by the powerful. Merrin Solis had simply kept working, and in the end, it was the powerful who had to find their way to her.